Hello everyone and welcome. This is Dawn. I'm so glad you could join me. Today I'll be using some Brutus Monroe products with my Whimsy Stamps products. Whimsy Stamps has teamed up with Brutus Monroe to bring you lots of great inspirational ideas this week. Both companies are giving away a $25 gift card, but you'll need to head on over to Instagram to join in on the fun. I will post the link below to my Instagram page where you can start the hop. I'll be using the Brutus Monroe pre-cut Slimline watercolor paper along with the Brutus Monroe Alabaster embossing powder and the Brutus Monroe green Aqua pigment ink. The pigment ink is awesome. A few little drops go a long way, so this little bottle will last you a long time. I'm going to pair it up with the Whimsy Stamps Decorated Tree die set and the Whimsy Stamps Sentiment Assortment Merry Christmas stamp set. So let's get started. First I'm going to create my background. I'm going to heat emboss the word Merry Christmas with the Alabaster embossing powder. I rubbed the entire watercolor paper with my embossing powder bag. Then using Versamark ink, I stamped the word Merry Christmas at the bottom of the paper and I worked my way up. I don't always put the Merry Christmas in the center. I kind of stagger the words. Sometimes Merry is at the end, sometimes it's at the beginning, and same thing with the word Christmas. I just pour the embossing powder on the paper, and then when my heat tool is good and hot, I heat emboss the sentiment. I do recommend heat embossing each line since the embossing ink is really hard to see on the white paper. I did a few lines so you can see how it looks. It's still a little hard to see on camera, but it's easy to see in person once you heat emboss it. You can see how I stamped the words. And so now I'm just going to keep on stamping and heat embossing until the paper is completely covered with the Merry Christmas sentiment. Next, I'm going to take my watercolor brush. This brush is filled with water, and I'm just going to squeeze a little water onto the paper and then just kind of brush it around. I don't want my paper soaking wet. I just want it wet enough to move the ink around. Then I'm going to put a few drops of the Brutus Monroe Aqua pigment ink onto the paper. As you can see, it comes out very vibrant and concentrated, but once you brush it around, it lightens up. It spreads out really nice, and I make sure to cover the entire background. Now, I was going for a much lighter look. I did put a little too many drops on the paper. I would suggest only doing a couple of drops at first and add more as you go, but no worries. I just took a cloth and wiped some off and it came out the perfect color that I was looking for. Next, I'm going to take the Whimsy Stamps Slimline Fancy Frame die and cut out the watercolored background. You'll see here I adhere a black border around the watercolored background, however I didn't like it and later I take it off. I want to have a white embossed Christmas tree, so I take pieces of scrap paper that I have of white cardstock and I put it in the Slimline Holly embossing folder. I put the cutting plate, the embossing folder, and another cutting plate on top and I run it through my Gemini Junior machine. I die cut the Christmas tree from the embossed paper. If you want the tree to have a lot of embossing, then I would die cut your images first and then put the pieces in the embossing folder. When you do it the way I'm doing it with the embossing first, when you die cut the pieces, it kind of flattens the embossing out, but that was the look I was going for. I die cut the garland and bow from some gold metallic cardstock and the tree trunk from some craft paper. I did end up changing the bow from a small bow to a big bow for the tree topper and then to a star at the very end of the video. I did make a lot of changes to this card as I went. I'm really sorry about that. And using the Whimsy Stamps Bookmark tag and die set, I cut one of the tags from Crest cardstock, but I later changed that to white. Like I said, a lot of changes as I went, but I just want to show you that it is okay to take the card apart as you go and make the changes. Okay, so after looking at the card with the craft tag, I decided the black background was way too dark for the look I was going for. So rather than throw away my background and start all over, I took the Slimline Fancy Frame and just die cut it off. Just make sure to line it up over the outline and make sure it slides into the die cut grooves and be sure to tape it in place so it doesn't move around. as you can see, it came out really nice and you can't even tell. So I decided not to go with any background and I just want to adhere it onto my card base. I take a piece of white cardstock cut to 8.5 by 7 and I scored it at 3.5 for my card base. I just lay out my tree where I want it to go on the card. And after I look at everything, I decided I didn't like the craft tag after all. So this is where I changed it over to the white tag and I just heat embossed the small Merry Christmas with gold embossing powder onto the tag. And now I'm just going to start assembling my card. I just adhere the watercolor paper to the card base. I put foam tape on the back of all the tree pieces because I want the tree to have dimension. I adhere the tree pieces to the card, starting with the tree trunk and then putting the biggest piece of the tree over the tree trunk, and I work my way up to the smallest tree topper. I did end up adding a little color to the tree trunk with some Distress Oxide Walnut Stain ink to make the tree trunk a little bit darker. Then I adhere the bow onto the tree along with the garland pieces. I cut off the ends of the garland that I felt were just a little too long and I didn't need them. I take some skinny string and I tie a bow on the tag and adhere it to the tree and trim off the excess. As I look at the tree, I decided I didn't like the bow tree topper with the bow on the tag, so I die cut the star tree topper from gold metallic cardstock and put that on the top of the tree instead. I know I made a lot of changes to the card as I went along, but I wanted to show you the process as I went through to get to the final product. I want to thank you for joining me on the Whimsy Stamps YouTube channel. I would love for you to leave a comment and let me know what you think of the card. Be sure to subscribe to the Whimsy Stamps channel and their other social media platforms so you don't miss out on any upcoming releases and great videos. As always, thanks for stopping by and have yourself a wonderful day.